What's going on, guys? I'm Nick the Tutor, and today I have an absolute banger video for you guys. We're going to be going over time management on standardized tests. Time management is one of the most important parts of any standardized test. They time these tests for a reason. They want to see how you can manage through the questions and get them done in the amount of time given. Now, I'm going to go over 5 tips in this video that will help you do better in time management on standardized tests. So let's get right into it. Some of these are going to sound quite simple, but they're hugely important. Number 1, you need to understand exactly how much time you have to complete each question, each passage, and each section of the test. So I want you guys to read the instructions carefully, understand the timing, and make sure to break it down into smaller chunks. We don't want to just say, okay, we have an hour to complete this section. We want to break that down into smaller chunks and say, okay, I have 10 minutes to complete these 10 questions, and then I can move on to the next group. On a lot of standardized tests, you have to manage your time effectively, and a lot of what that entails is understanding that some questions are going to be faster than others. So when you create your time plan for any standardized test, you want to make sure that you're not just giving yourself the same amount of time for everything, because that's not how standardized tests work. Some questions take significantly longer than other questions, and you need to account for that in your plan. So read the instructions and plan it out. Tip number 2 for time management on standardized tests. You want to tackle easy questions first. On most standardized tests, not all, but most, all of the questions are worth the same number of raw score points. So it's not an effective strategy to spend a huge amount of time on the hardest questions. A lot of times it's a much better strategy to make sure that you do well on the easy and medium difficulty questions on that test. If we're talking about a test such as the SAT or the ACT, this definitely applies. Even though the SAT is now using item response theory, there's not a huge difference in the value from question to question, so you want to make sure that you're spending adequate time on the easy questions. Also, you may want to tackle those first to get those out of the way, maybe save yourself a little bit of time, and then you can use that banked time on the more difficult questions. That's a very important strategy. A lot of students really like doing that. If you don't like picking and choosing which questions are easier, you don't have to use that kind of strategy. Some people love it, some people don't. Part of preparing for standardized tests is finding what works for you. What works for you doesn't necessarily work for someone else. What worked for a friend or a sibling doesn't necessarily work for you. That's why you have to develop your own strategy for your exam. So let's get into point number 3. One of the most important things you can do for time management on any standardized test is utilize process of elimination, especially if the test is multiple choice. Obviously, if the test is not multiple choice where you have to write an answer or fill in something, then process of elimination is not going to be effective. But at the same time, on any multiple choice test, process of elimination is one of the most important time management strategies, because if you're struggling on a question, sometimes you can't find the right answer. What helps in that instance is to eliminate the wrong answers, and then you can have a more accurate guess. So if you have 4 answer choices and you can knock out 2 of them, you can guess more quickly. You also can have a higher chance of getting the question right. So using process elimination can really help time management. A lot of students sit there on a question that they're stuck on, looking at all 4 choices for 5 minutes and waste a lot of time. If you say, all right, if I can eliminate 3 of these choices, I will have the answer, that is an effective strategy for getting the answer and also for managing your time. So definitely take that into consideration. Technique number 4 for doing better on time management on standardized tests: pay attention to the clock. So many students taking standardized tests don't actually look at the clock or some sort of timing device to understand, am I on time, right? This is a hugely important thing. A great tip for standardized tests is bring a watch. If they let you bring a timer, bring a timer. If the test gives you a timer, make sure you use that timer. For example, on the new digital SAT, there's a timer on the top. Some students feel that gives them a level of anxiety. I understand that. It's definitely a nerve-wracking thing to see the time ticking down. At the same time, in order to complete the test effectively, you need to know where you need to be in the test. So I highly recommend that any student taking a time test pays attention to time. Now, sometimes you want to bring your own timing device. You want to have your timing plan in place, and this can really help you feel very prepared going into the test, which will also help you complete things more quickly. So definitely look at the time, bring a timing device, and make sure that you're on time while you're taking a test. All right, tip number 5, guys. This is one of the ones that's kind of hard to achieve, but once you understand this principle, it really helps your time management on standardized tests. You cannot spend too much time on one question. You don't know how many times students have ruined a standardized test score by running out of time at the end of the section because they got stuck on one, they got frustrated. I want to get this question, I need to get this question. Yes, you do want to get the question. But at the same time, there may be 10 questions at the end you might have to miss if you run out of time. So you want to give yourself a shot clock, right? If on my test, the maximum I want to spend on any one question is say a minute and a half, 2 minutes, whatever the amount is, you want to make sure that you're abiding by that shot clock. So as soon as you're hitting that time, and this is part of the practice, right? You need to like understand how long that feels. Here doing a question, I start to get the feeling, I may have spent a little bit too much time on this. Let me cut myself off, put an answer down, and move on. This is the most important thing. This is where students tend to waste so much time. I've timed students over the years on individual questions, and on questions that students struggle on, they tend to take double the amount of time of a question that they actually know the answer to. So that's a bad mix, right? You're spending double the time and getting the answer wrong, right? You don't want to do that. If you're going to get an answer wrong, you want to make the decision quickly and move on with the rest of the test. If you guys can follow these time rules, these time tips, you can finish any standardized test in the time allotted. The last thing I'll leave you guys with, you need to practice. You need to practice with time. You need to time yourself on homework assignments, on practice tests. That's the most crucial component to getting the time down on any standardized test, is actually timing yourself. You do not want to do things untimed because then you can fall into bad habits and that will affect your score. I know you guys can achieve success on any standardized test you take. I'm Nick the Tutor, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.